Hey, welcome back. Today we're talking about horizontal stretches and compressions. 16.1 we talked about shifts. We talked about vertical and horizontal shifts, moving the graph up and down, left and right. 16.2 we talked about vertical stretches and compressions. Now we're talking about horizontal, so making it skinnier or fatter basically. So again, what does the stretch mean? Well, if I stretch, we're making it bigger. And compress, we're shrinking. Same as with vertical. We talked about inside the parentheses, the minus C part. We move the graph to the right if there is a subtraction sign. So if we're subtracting 6, we go to the right, 6. We move to the left if there's an addition sign. So if it's plus 6, we move to the left, 6. It's opposite of what you think because of the formula has a minus in it. We also talked about the outside. We talked about having this plus D. So if I'm adding, I'm going up. If I'm subtracting, I'm going down. 16.2, we talked about this A here. We talked about if A is greater than 1, it's a vertical stretch. And we talked about if A is between 0 and 1, it's a not horizontal, it is a vertical compression. Jumping the gun. And then one other thing we talked about was if there's a negative. So if A is negative, it reflects or flips over the x-axis. So that's what we've talked about so far. Today, we've added another letter in here. We've got A, C, and D. So which one are we missing? B. Here it is. B. So it's inside parentheses, but it's still not inside with the C. So here's what happens. This one's probably the most tricky. We're going to start with the opposite. So if B is between 0 and 1. Now, this is where it gets tricky. It's going to be a horizontal stretch. And again, it's opposite of vertical. Remember, vertical, it was a stretch if it was greater than 1. And we're saying if B is less than 1, between 0 and 1. And the reason for this, it's a horizontal stretch by, you take 1 over B. So you're taking it by the reciprocal. So if it was 1/2, it would really be by 2. So it's stretching it because you're taking the reciprocal. Flip and switch. Remember that means flip and switch. Oops. Flip and switch. Now, if B is greater than 1, it's going to be a horizontal compression. Again, it's opposite. Because we're taking 1 over B, again, you're taking the reciprocal, flip and switch, whatever B is. And also a good thing to remember, just like A, if B is negative, it reflects over the y-axis this time. So x-axis was for A, y-axis is for B. So this one's probably the most tricky. Again, if it's B is a fraction or a decimal, it's going to be a horizontal stretch by the reciprocal of it. If B is greater than 1, it's going to be horizontal compression by the reciprocal of whatever B is. And if B is negative, it reflects over the y-axis. And again, I wrote it up there, but it also has a spot here. If B is negative, the graph reflects over y-axis. And that's what we set up there. Okay, so let's look at some. I think that's the best way to understand what's happening. So inside my parentheses, I have a 2. So if I look here, there's my 2. Since it's inside, that's going to be my B. My A would be over here on the outside. Remember, it's not inside the parentheses. So I'm looking at my B. If it's greater than 1, it's going to be a horizontal compression. If it's between 0 and 1, it's a horizontal stretch. And remember, you do it by the reciprocal. And if there's a negative on the outside, then we have a reflection over the y-axis. So I've got a horizontal compression because it's greater than 1. And again, we're not flipping it because there's no negative sign. Now, we're going to take the reciprocal, 1/2, and we're not going to make it negative. We want it to be positive. We're multiplying everything by positive. So anytime you get it out, it should be positive. So do not make it negative, keep it positive. There's nothing else inside. I'm not shifting to the left or the right, but there is this +3 on the outside. So that tells me I'm shifting up 3 units. Let's look at number 2. Again, there's no A on the outside. I'm not multiplying by anything out here. There is this -1/3 on the inside. Since it's negative, this negative sign tells me that we're going to do a reflection, can't spell, reflect over y-axis. The 1/3 tells me it's between 0 and 1, so it's going to be a horizontal stretch of, now I'm going to take the reciprocal, so instead of 1/3, it's going to be 3. And again, we're not including the negative. The negative just tells us if it is going to be flipped over the y-axis. So all of these numbers you get out here should be positive. All you're doing is flipping it. You're not switching the sign or anything. Okay, then I look inside the parentheses. I've got this -1. That tells me I'm moving to the right, since it's minus. Shift right 1. The +9 tells me I'm shifting up 9. Let's look at 3. So I've got an a quadratic because of this 2 up here. It tells me it's a parabola. I look on the outside, there's not multiplying by anything on the outside of the parentheses. However, I am multiplying by this -4 on the inside. The negative tells me that I'm reflecting over the y-axis. And the 4 is greater than 1, so it tells me it's going to be a horizontal compression of, well, I'm going to flip it, so it's going to be 1/4. I'm also adding 3, so it tells me I'm shifting to the left, since it's +3. The plus 9 tells me I'm shifting up 9. So let's look at 4. Again, I've got a parabola. It's a quadratic. There's nothing on the outside I'm multiplying by, no a. There is a number I multiply on the inside, 9. It's not negative, so there's no reflection over the y. It's greater than 1, so it's going to be a horizontal compression of, flip it, instead of 9, it's 1/9. I'm not adding or subtracting anything else inside the parentheses, but outside I'm doing -8, so I'm going down 8. Look at this one. Again, nothing out here. Here, there's a negative, so it's like -1. Since then there is a negative, I know there's going to be a reflection. Why can I never spell that word? Reflect over y-axis. If I multiply by 1, nothing's changing. Same thing as vertical. If I multiply by 1, it's staying the same, so nothing's happening. It's not vertically stretching or compressing. I mean, horizontally stretching or compression. It's just the same. So the only thing it's doing, that -1 tells us it's reflecting over the y-axis. Inside the parentheses, I also have this -3, which tells me I'm shifting right 3. And then on the outside, I've got the -7, which tells me I'm shifting down 7. Okay, let's look at number last. Again, no a, nothing multiplied on the outside. There is something multiplied on the inside. It's not a negative, so there's no reflection over the y-axis, but it's a horizontal. This time it's a stretch because it's between 0 and 1, because then when I flip it, instead of 1/4, it's going to be 4/1 or just 4. Over here, I've got a -5, so I'm shifting right 5. And then there's nothing on the outside of the parentheses. I'm not adding or subtracting anything. It's plus 0, so it's not going up or down any. It's going up or down 0. So that's it. Well, there it is. There's all of the things that can happen. It can shift left, right, up, down. It can be horizontally stretched and compressed, and it can be vertically stretched and compressed. All functions can. On 16.4 next week, we are going to put all of this together and practice that. So nothing new next week. It's just going to be everything put together. Okay, there you go.